everyone. All right, so I am gonna work on projecting and try to see people around the columns, and hopefully we can kind of still have like a good connection. Thank you so much for this introduction. Always funny to hear about yourself. So I guess where I'm starting with is, so I'm coming from America, as one might notice from my accent, and actually just kind of a random little tidbit, tomorrow is my birthday, so I'm waiting for cake. No. Anyone want to brave a guess? How old do you think I'm turning? Oh. Very cute, very cute. Yeah, so kind of just like, people really never believe me when I tell them that I'm about to turn 50. And so I will share I have a couple tips on how to make sure you do that well. One is sunscreen, wearing lots of sunscreen. I'm obsessed with sunscreen. I practically wear it to go to bed. Number 2, don't have children. Those kids, have you seen your parents? Do you see how your parents look? You did that to them. That is your fault. And so kids, they just stress you out. And the third thing is I am actually not turning 50, I'm turning 41. So lie about your age. But so where am I going with all of that? I hopefully do have a little bit of life experience. That is like a cute way of saying I've made a lot of mistakes. And I kind of wanted to like flip the typical talk and share with you mostly about mistakes that we've made along the way. And so kind of be a little bit more of like, here's like how awesome and amazing we are, and a little bit more of like, let's figure out the right way to do this. So why am I qualified to tell you about my mistakes? First off, I've made many of them. The plus side of that is every time you make a mistake, you have an opportunity to learn, right? That's the silver lining. So I've learned so much from my mistakes over the years, I'm just gonna probably keep making them. And so, okay, so what do I do? So as was mentioned, I started a nonprofit organization called Vida Plena. We are based in Ecuador in South America for the geography there. And so what do we do? The short version, it's mental health care, specifically for vulnerable communities. But what does that actually look like? What that actually looks like is if you are somebody who's not only struggling with poverty, struggling with coming from a vulnerable, marginalized community, but you probably also have something like there's problems in your relationship. Maybe there's a lot of conflict in your marriage, maybe somebody's cheating. There might be problems with your kids. You're probably definitely struggling with economic issues. Maybe you've lost a family member. And so the result is, I think many of us have been there, you can identify with this, is this overwhelming sense of like, you're depressed, you're anxious, and just like don't know what to do. There's like this overall sense of a loss of hope and a loss of meaning. And so what we do with Vida Plena is we bring people together, it's group therapy, and it's groups of 8 people. And what we do is just really build a space for people to be able to come together, support one another, have a place to be able to talk through their problems honestly, and be able to learn and kind of work through those issues. So we do that specifically through a community-based model. This is some of my team. We'll talk about the plants in a second. But specifically what we do is a community-based model. We train local community members, they're non-specialists, to be able to facilitate these groups. And then at graduation, I give everybody symbolically a cactus because they are dried out and prickly and resilient. And so we'll circle back to the plants at the end. So this is one of our graduating groups, specifically in the area of Otavalo. We work a lot with Quechua people, Quechua speakers. And this is Anita, she is my co-founder. She is an Ecuadorian clinical psychologist. So, like I said, just kind of briefly what we do. We do have had some great success. One of the things is I'm really proud of 71% of people, that's almost 3 in 4, who come through our group. After the 8 weeks are over, they see that their depression symptoms are completely reduced, or they end the program with mild symptoms. We also see significant improvements in suicide and anxiety. We track this very carefully. This is something that is very important to us, is to have like deep sense of like the evidence for what we're doing. And so we track every single week. This is called the PHQ-9. It's a standardized self-evaluation of depression symptoms, patient health questionnaire 9. And so we have people take measurements at intake and then across the 8 sessions. We have on average almost 8-point reduction. 5 points is considered to be clinically significant. So very proud of that. And also, for people who might be familiar with us, might have heard about us before, something that's new this year specifically, we've gotten very good at tracking people at the end of the program, not following up the program. So this is where people start at the beginning, this is at the end of the 8 weeks, and then we're especially proud about these two numbers here, is that 3 months and 6 months out, we see that the improvements hold. And so that's something we're really proud of, because we hoped that was the case, but we didn't know for sure, and now we do know for sure. But okay, not here to talk about that. Instead of here to talk about mistakes, specifically screw up. So I'm gonna go through 5 specific mistakes that we've made. And why am I gonna talk about that? I'm gonna talk about that for kind of like 2 main reasons. The first is like, often at these types of presentations, there can be this sense of like, wow, these people have done something amazing, and they're so talented and brilliant, and that all does apply to me, but no, it's like, when you kind of hear the backstory, and I think this was like what was for me very specifically encouraging, was seeing like how much people have messed up along the way, how many things have gone wrong along the way, and realizing that like it's definitely not a smooth road to success. It is much more of this sort of thing happening up and down. And so like realizing that and hearing that, it just actually, it helps open up that space of like, okay, maybe I could do that. Maybe I can step out in faith in the same way. And when things go wrong, it doesn't feel so terrible. It doesn't feel, it's like, okay, like this is normal. This is part of how these things go. So with that, the other part of that is like, I hope for you guys to be able to learn from some of my mistakes. Basically, I don't want you to repeat them. Go out and make your own mistakes. Don't copy me. And so that's kind of my other point, is like, hopefully you can like learn a little bit from this. So first mistake that we made, build it and they will come. This is very much the classic entrepreneur mistake. As you can see, the chirping cricket, yes. So all of us as entrepreneurs, you love what you're doing. You think, okay, I have built this amazing thing. It's so beautiful. It's my baby. Everyone's going to love it. There's going to be an overwhelming demand and need for what I'm offering. That is how we all think about it. And I think it was on one of my very first potential fundraising calls, the potential donor, he says to me, he's like, what are you going to do, Joy, if people don't sign up? And I had to like work to keep a straight face. So incredulous, like, how could he think that? We have an amazing program. It's recommended by the WHO. It has over 20 years of evidence backing it, academic studies. It has been used by hundreds of thousands of people across sub-Saharan Africa. And we're just bringing it to Latin America. And on top of that, it's free. How could people not want that? We'd done our due diligence. Everybody had talked about all of the, how there's such a big gap between the need for mental health and mental health options. I was certain we were gonna have lines out the door. Turns out, his words were very prophetic, and it turns out it is actually quite a challenge to convince people to show up to a group session with a bunch of strangers, bare their heart and soul, talk about all of their life problems. And then on top of that, they probably there's an opportunity cost. There's maybe the kids they have to take care of. They have like work obligations. The definition of depression is like you don't want to do things. You have a lack of desire to do things. And so there are a lot of challenges of getting people to show up, and that continues to be an ongoing challenge. The flip side of that is it meant, especially at the beginning when we were doing the pilot, myself and Anita, my co-founder, we literally would walk around the mercado, the fruit and vegetable market in the city, handing out flyers. We spent a lot of time in parks talking to people, and as we tried to like recruit people into the program. So what that meant is we had an opportunity to hear people's real life problems, what they're actually dealing with, what they're actually going through, understand much more deeply. The second thing is we've also taken a partnership model. Majority of our people who come through our program now are referred to us by other community-based organizations. And so what we do is we work with other organizations who are offering other types of services, and we work for them to build mental health into their programming. And so what that means is really mental health, if you are in a good place emotionally, mentally, it means you can supercharge whatever other sort of poverty thing that you care about. If you're looking to work on income generation, if you're working on women's issues, health issues, all of those outcomes are even further improved by working in mental health. And so by putting those together, we are able to build a much stronger program. Okay, second screw up that happened. Collect all the data. So we work to be an evidence-based program. We really care about that. So we went in, we had a very robust monitoring and evaluation plan where, as we saw, we track people when they come in every single week. We have multiple different indicators beyond just depression scores that we're looking at. And so the mistake was specifically, that's all fine, that's fine. The mistake was not having a very clear plan of how we are going to organize that data. So very specifically, we were just sending out Google Forms. Everybody filled out Google Forms. There was dozens of Google Forms, and every single group had a different folder. And so that was all fine. All the data is coming in. We're collecting all the data. And then we had done the pilot. We knew things from the pilot went well. So we just keep collecting all this data and all these dozens and dozens and dozens of expounding Google folders. Until one day we have a funder who very asked us so how's it going? We'd love to see your numbers. And I was like, oh, the numbers. Yes, let me get back to you in a couple days. Cue me and Anita and a wonderful volunteer. Volunteers have saved our lives so many times. Frantically copying and pasting line by line into an Airtable for an entire week, pulling 12, 14-hour days. There was a lot of takeout pizza that week. And so pulling it all together so we could actually give them an answer, how's the program going? And so lesson there, screw up, was not having a clear plan from the beginning on how to organize all of the data. We now have a really well put together Airtable, which is still in that space, but we have a dedicated monitoring and evaluation person whose whole entire job is to keep the data organized and fully accessible. If you ask me right now, how many people in your program, what exactly are their improvements, what's their average attendance, I could open up our nifty dashboard and actually tell you the answer to all these things. But early on, could not do that. So cueing our next mistake. So hiring issues, specifically hiring issues. So like I mentioned, we started with the pilot. We work in Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador. It's a proper city. And then after seeing that it was working with the pilot, really our mission is to be able to reach people who would otherwise have no access to mental health. So we decided to work in a different geographic region, Imbabura. It's very rural, it's highly indigenous. So we hired a group of facilitators who were actually in that original photo. They were trained, and then all of our facilitators, they're non-specialists, but we do have clinical supervisors who are psychologists who then monitor and maintain, help them out as they're going along, checking the cases, specifically hard cases. We do a lot of very careful follow-up. So I hired a supervisor for that region. He was trained as well. We set him off. At about the 6-month mark, it started to become clear it wasn't going perfectly, it wasn't going great because he had a lot of side projects that were clearly taking up more of his time. And we had a conversation, came to the agreement that he was gonna leave the team. Okay, that was fine. So I called together my facilitators. We don't have an office, gotta keep those costs down. I called everybody to a coffee shop. And we're all sitting around our coffees, and I'm about to make this announcement that he's going to be leaving. And I was a little bit nervous about how they're going to take it, this kind of their benevolent father, as I thought, and tell them the news, and there's kind of just silence. I was okay, not how I expected this to go. And then kind of slowly, quietly starts to come out a few commentaries that actually these very sweet group of women who I thought had been doing really wonderful work, start to say how they'd been feeling really discouraged. And it turns out he had just his way of interacting with them was exceptionally harsh, very critical, and we're a mental health organization. These are a group of kind empaths. and so just knowing that, that had been happening and I was unaware of it I felt really I let them down. I really felt that I had let them down, and it's my responsibility as the director to make sure that when you're a manager of managers, it's hard, you lose that stream of connection. Mm-hmm. And that is that having those and so that was my mistake of just being trusting the fact that he had a good curriculum, he had kind of on paper, but he didn't have any management experience previously. And I don't think he was a terrible person, but he just didn't know how to encourage people and also how to call out, how to help train people. Mm-hmm. And so that was a heartbreaking moment to see that my team, like they came out, they're like, we were thinking of quitting. We just thought we were not any good at this. And these were women who were doing a fantastic job in terms of like the careful numbers and the tracking on their participants. They were doing a fantastic job, but they just felt, because of his harsh criticisms, that they weren't. And so now what we've done is we've implemented a 360 feedback system. So all the managers in the team, and myself included, there's surveys that are people below them, their peers, and so we're looking at that full 360. And then also we ended up promoting one of the women from the team as the coordinator. So because she's been part of that team, she been in that role herself, she understands much better what it takes. But yeah, so that was a hard moment. That was a hard moment of really feeling like I let my team down. So next mistake, next screw up, is this. Classically, being an entrepreneur, and I think of myself in that sense as an entrepreneur, running a startup is classically very challenging. There's a high rates of burnout. And so I'm running a mental health organization. I was determined not to become one of those statistics. So much of the data shows that really important for your mental health is maintaining really good social connections, keeping up with your family and your friends, really prioritizing that. Exercise, hugely important. So I was determined. I was like, I'm gonna make sure I keep all my friendships going, all my important social connections. I'm gonna keep exercising, and I'm gonna make sure this startup goes well, and I'll do that apparently by sacrificing sleep. And for most of my life, I would joke, my mom would be like, you could sleep when you're dead. That was my unofficial life motto. And it wasn't like an intentional decision, but you're working late on a project, you're kind of like, so you're working till like 11:30, you slam the laptop shut, get in bed, pull the blankets up, and then wake up at 4 a.m. being like, oh, that email, I forgot. And they're like, I gotta do it now. And then next thing you know, you're getting out of bed, you're sending the email, and then you're like, well, I'll just keep doing a little bit more. And like you do that day after day and week after week, and this is kind of like the startup grind without realizing it. This is where, and then you end up like this. And it got to the point, like it just weighs on you. And I'd get to the point, like I would just get so upset and angry at the randomest things. And I'd be like having this emotional breakdown, and my partner would be like, what's wrong with you, Joe? I'm like, I'm just overtired, I just need to sleep, you don't understand. And so I think that is like the mistake. It's like, that is the sense of like, you're doing something that feels important, it feels meaningful, there's always more to do, always more that needs to be done. But if you're not thinking about the long term and how to care for yourself for the long term, you won't be able to do it. You won't be that person that your team needs, the people around you need. And so it's like, you have to do that basic sense of taking care of yourself. Next mistake. So a year before starting Vida Plena, I was fired. And I was specifically fired because I was told that I was a weak leader. So that was very devastating news. And I don't know if it was completely true. I had previously started an organization that had helped a few thousand people in Honduras. I'd been running a fair trade company that was the largest in our space. So it wasn't completely true, and the details in it aren't exactly that critical. It's a misalignment between how things were expressed and what was understood and needed. But of course, like in those moments, you feel this sense of total failure. Like, what if maybe they're actually right? And what if I really don't have what it takes? And so those things, they weigh on you. They weigh on you and they kind of hold you down. And it felt like a big failure, and I didn't talk about it for a very long time. It was kind of this kind of cloud of shame that I put in my background. Even like for practicing for this presentation, I gave it to a friend, and she was like, I didn't know that about you, Joy. And I was like, yeah, that's right, I didn't. I kind of hide that. And so the reason I'm like sharing this now is because I really want for each of you to know that like if there's something like you feel that you've had this big fail moment, like this is what it is, like this big fail, and it feels like this black mark, that's not the end of the story. And so very specifically for me, so I was fired, I went through I took a long bike ride across Ecuador, did a lot of thinking, and that was like where Vida Plena came from. I had been thinking about Vida Plena, I had the idea, it was for several years, but I was afraid to take that leap. I was afraid to actually step out there and start my own thing. And probably if I hadn't gotten fired, I don't think I would have had the courage to take that step and actually do my own thing. I would have stayed in that organization, had a lot of dysfunctional things, slightly abusive managing, and I would have just stayed there and been miserable for years. And I just would have kind of ground it out and just did the best I could. And so it really took like God, I really think it was God, like literally pushing me out of the nest. And I think there's those moments in which we don't know how it's going to come together, but kind of God has that bigger plan. So that's sort of like that was like this big mistake. Not even, I guess you could say mistake, but just really like, it felt like a total fail. It felt like a complete fail. And then coming through that, you can come through, but you don't see that in the moment. You definitely don't see those things in the moment. It's definitely after the fact, comes through a lot longer. Okay, this is my bonus. I promised 5, but I have a bonus one. So here we are, the struggle bus. I particularly love this photo because UConn is the University of Connecticut. That is, it's the university like 20 minutes down the road from my parents' house. I just found this meme on the internet, and then I was like, wait, UConn? Well, anyway. I put in very small words, you can't quite see it here, impact. This is the struggle bus hitting impact. So, okay, so kind of a quick story. I mentioned one of the things I did in Ecuador before starting. So I started Vida Plena, kind of backstory. I started Vida Plena partially because I had been running this fair trade company, and I just became compelled over and over again that the fair trade company was about like giving people living incomes and a living wage. And I just became compelled over and over again that wasn't enough. But anyway, so I'm running this company. Specifically, we work with women who make handmade jewelry that gets sold in the US. It goes to high-end shops and like big chain stores. I think we sold it in, there's a, Lewis, what's it called? What's the British one? You guys have Lewis? John Lewis. We sold here in we sold to John Lewis. Anyway, so we had a whole US-based sales team that was, getting those orders for us, and then it was my job to make sure we fulfilled the orders on time. So we're working on like New York timelines, New York customers, and then I'm working in South America on South American timelines, and all the mistakes and all the errors, everything was always behind. And so it was months of this constant tension of like trying to push things through, and then the team in the US is like angry, and we're always behind, and everything's always going wrong, and I'm trying to fix all these problems, just like this tension was just building and building and building. And so I'm on the phone one day talking to this US team, and they're just laying into me, and they're upset, and I'm upset, and we're just like, it's building, and I got so angry, I literally took my phone in the middle of the call and slammed it on the ground, and it smashes into all these little pieces. And I was like, okay, Joy, we need to take a minute. So I didn't want my team to like see me have like a total breakdown. So I was just like, I'm just gonna calmly walk out the front gates. I'm gonna walk down the road. There's like this dead end over here, and there's a car, like this parked taxi. I'm just gonna sit here on the curb, have myself a little cry. So I'm sitting there getting it all out, and this small schoolgirl walks by in her school uniform, and she asked me, "Estás bien? Like, are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, totally fine, it's all fine. And like, where I'm going with that, what was the mistake? What was the screw up there? The screw up was I had lost perspective. I had completely lost perspective on what we were doing. At the end of the day, we're making jewelry. Like, no one was gonna die if the order went late. Yes, it's important to make the company go well and make the orders, but I had completely lost perspective. And now with Vida Plena, like there are lives on the line. Like we are working with people who are suicidal, they are depressed, there are lives on the line. But that said, the point being is I am still not completely in control. We can do things as much as I say it to my team, and the reality is at some point like something is probably gonna go wrong. And if it was up to us, we would follow every single person around every single moment, and we'd prevent that from happening. But we can't do that, and we're not God. We're not God. We don't have that ability to control every single detail and micromanage every single element. And so things aren't. I have to accept that, and it's like having that bigger perspective. And so, kind of like with that, is this. This is why I'm here today. So I was talking. It's like, let's make some birds. So like I was talking with a mentor, and I talked about the idea. I told him about the idea of this talk, and he was a bit hesitant. He's like, I don't know, Joy. That's kind of like a vulnerable thing to stand up and like share all of your biggest mistakes, kind of like these errors. And it is, and also I think it's really important because I really want to normalize this feeling of what we're doing, like if you want to do something big, you want to do something that's impactful, there will be mistakes made along the way. You will have screw ups, you will do things wrong, it will be your fault. And sometimes it is actually your fault, and you look back, I knew that was gonna go wrong, it went wrong, and like, it's my fault. And that is actually just part of it. It is like, you do the best you can, but there will be mistakes. And if you don't have any mistakes, you're probably aiming too low. Like, your ambitions are too low, and you're not reaching high enough. And the thing with this, though, is us as Christians, so everybody in this room, we have something that makes it specifically different. There's this verse I hold on to a lot. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me." The point is, I think this is like how God works. God doesn't want people who are amazing and they're doing just amazing, because then all the attention gets put on them. God works differently. This is how, like, this is a perspective that's different from like the world. God is looking to work through people that ultimately are going to point the glory back to him and not point it back to themselves. And so, like, I really rest on this, because like, definitely here in the conference, I am not the smartest and most intelligent person here. I am also not naturally the most talented and like capable person here. But you know, the thing that is different is the fact that in this presentation, I gave you memes. No. So you'll remember it. No, obviously what's different is, like, from what we're doing is we have this power of God behind us, and he is working with us despite our weaknesses. And so I think, like much of you, there's definitely moments I am overwhelmed. I don't believe in myself. I don't know if we're going the right direction. I don't know if we're doing the right thing. But the point is, God works despite that. So the second one, and I think it is exactly this: God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. And so God works through us despite our imperfections, and precisely because of our imperfections. So kind of close off of that, one last meme for you. If anybody here loves plants, this is how it feels. So I think of Vida Plena very much like as a garden. Vida Plena it's my job, and I'm the gardener. It's my job to plant the seeds, to pull the weeds, to mix the cow poop into the dirt. But it's God's job to actually like make the sunshine, make the rain, and I can't make the seeds sprout. I can't make them sprout. So I have to do my part. I have to do the work, but it's actually God who ultimately will make this project flourish. And so in the moments when I get really discouraged with Vida Plena, because an entrepreneurship journey is up and down quite a lot, I have to step back and be like, okay, if God decides that this is the end of the road, then that's what God has decided. And if God decides that this is going to be successful and we're going to do different things, it's not because I'm amazing, it's because God has decided that's where it's going to be. And so ultimately, that's the last idea I want to leave with you, is really when you're thinking about what's the next step for you in your life, your career. Some of us are mid-career, some of us are starting. It doesn't matter. The point is that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have the perfect plan. The point is trusting in God through that and stepping out faithfully. So that is just kind of what I wanted to leave with you today. Thank you so much. Okay, so I know there was questions, but you guys want a bonus? Can I give you guys a bonus? Yes. Okay, so because I come from like the world of mental health, we love to do reframing exercises, and I want to leave this one with you, and I personally do this a lot. When you come up against a problem or you make a mistake, literally write this down. So one day later, this is like a journaling exercise. Like, what do I know now that I didn't know before? So, okay, I'm going to talk you through one that's very specific. We have a lot of staffing. We have staffing issues. You have a big enough team. Right now we're about 20. There's people who are unhappy about something all the time. I was devastated by this. I thought everyone was going to think we're the perfect. But so we had a staffing issue. And the first thing I had to write down for that one is like, I didn't know that this was a particular complaint. I didn't know. I thought everything, I was like going along perfectly. So now I know. But it was still pretty stressful. So literally what I do is in my calendar, so I don't forget, 1 month later, I write this as my prompt. What is something that you learned from that situation? So we learned that we needed to reframe how we do our pay scale. That's what we learned in this particular circumstance. And then you write, again, you put it in your calendar, 3 months later, what is something good that came about from that situation? We were able to correct that issue. Like that, but you can't see this in the beginning. The point is you can see these things as you go out with that perspective of time. And the whole point of this exercise is it helps you start, and rather than seeing like problems and mistakes as being like, oh, this terrible thing, the idea is you're starting to reframe it as like, okay, this is an opportunity. What am I gonna learn from this? Okay, something's good is gonna come from this. Like, what are we gonna get from it? And sometimes it's hard to like find that. But like it is, the idea is you're reframing. And so anyway, leave this one with you guys as a bonus. Yeah.